distinguished panel. But before I make remarks on behalf of South Africa, I just want to make two appeals to all of us as part of the global community of persons. The first is, I think all of our countries must give urgent attention to reform of the United Nations in order to strengthen its ability to protect those who are innocent and require protection. We all talk about UN reform, but we haven't concretely defined what we mean. And it is clear in the circumstances of the people of Palestine that enforcement of peace is a necessary aspect that must be addressed in the process of UN reform. A second is that I think it is vital for this group, which is in support of the just cause of the people of Sahrawi, to engage in a broader education campaign for an understanding of this problem of colonization, because I believe there are many policymakers who are not aware. I'm aware, for example, in the continent of Africa, that many African countries are being persuaded to open consulates in the occupied territories. And this is happening at a number that is rather startling. And it indicates a pure misunderstanding of the dire situation in which the people of Western Sahara find themselves. So I think there should be more outreach to countries that are vulnerable and that can be persuaded by wrong means to affirm the colonial situation of the people of Sahrawi. So then to my remarks. I'm really honored, Madam Moderator and distinguished panelists and delegates, to have the opportunity to address you today on behalf of my country, South Africa, at this side event arranged by the Geneva Support Group for Western Sahara on a very important theme of people's permanent sovereignty over natural resources in the context of decolonization. This topic lies at the heart of the continued unlawful occupation of Western Sahara that is a blight on the human conscience and has endured for far too long. Western Sahara has been on the decolonization agenda of the United Nations for over 50 years and has been occupied by Morocco for 49 years. This comes back to my raising the matter of enforcement. You can't have resolution after resolution, and resolutions of the global community mean nothing, and countries can continue to act with impunity despite the voice of the globe. It's been similarly 33 years since the Security Council adopted Resolution 690 of 1991, which made provision for a referendum that would allow the Sahrawi people to finally determine their own destiny. Despite countless resolutions adopted by the United Nations, which derive directly from the provisions of the UN Charter, the Sahrawi remain in chains. They've been unable to exercise their most basic right, the right to self-determination, which provides for the realization of all other fundamental rights, together with the associated right of peoples under occupation to permanent sovereignty over their natural resources. And I remind you all once more, as we talk today about Gaza and the people of Palestine, that often in our contributions, the word occupation is missing. People of Palestine are living in an occupied territory. This principle of sovereignty over one's natural resources found expression in the 1975 advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice. It has been echoed, as the learned colleagues on the panel said, in the more recent judgments of the European Court of Justice and the High Court of South Africa, which state unequivocally that Morocco, as an occupying power, has no sovereignty over Western Sahara, and that its natural resources can only be extracted and traded legally with the free, prior, and informed consent of the Polisario Front. We welcome these judgments, including the 2022 ruling of the African Court on Human and People's Rights, which drew from the long-standing principled positions of the African Union. In addition to providing that Morocco's continued occupation is incompatible with the right to self-determination, the ruling further provided that all member states, including member states of the African Union, have a legal obligation to find a permanent solution to Morocco's occupation. The Africa Group, making up a large segment of the UN family of nations, has therefore become a target to persuade against support for the people of Sahara. And more must be done to ensure that they honor the decisions of the African Union. We need to ensure that the people of Sahrawi have the enjoyment of their right to self-determination and to abstain from doing something about their plight would give recognition to occupation or impact negatively on the ability of Sahrawi to discharge their rights. The plunder of natural resources in Western Sahara is not only unlawful, but contributes directly to the prolonged occupation and ultimately the maintenance of the status quo. As with most situations of decolonization, it is about resources. As a country whose freedom was attained with the support of the international community, our country, South Africa, stands in solidarity with the Sahrawi people. Until the last colony on the African continent is decolonized, we believe none of us will be truly free. As part of this process, my country is particularly concerned about the ongoing violations being perpetrated against the Sahrawi and Morocco's continued refusal to provide access to the Office of the High Commissioner to monitor the human rights situation in Western Sahara. I recently experienced a very ludicrous experience where I had a meeting with the UN envoy of the Secretary General in South Africa. And I was chastised by the Moroccan government for having held a meeting because the UN envoy should have sought permission from the government of Morocco, which was an astounding statement to be made. We remain also concerned about the fact that the Security Council has consistently failed to provide the UN mission for the referendum in Western Sahara with a mandate to report on human rights. We are further concerned on the impasse toward finding a lasting solution that will provide for the self-determination of the Sahrawi through a referendum in line with the relevant United Nations and AU resolutions. Of course, often colonizers believe the longer they stay in dominance over an oppressed people, then the international community will forget and this colonization will be permanent. We must never forget. We in South Africa, we knew, although the struggle was long, that we would eventually win freedom. And we believe all colonized people will win freedom eventually. In 2024, we joined together as an international community to commemorate the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And yet, the people of Sahrawi, just as the Palestinian people, continue to be deprived of the rights and freedoms that the Universal Declaration enshrines. The time has come for the international community to actively uphold the law and to end the occupation once and for all. We can no longer afford a situation in which grave violations and breaches are relentlessly committed, where perpetrators are not held to account, and where they continue to operate with impunity. The longer you allow oppression, the more the oppressor believes they have the right to abuse. You see this in Palestine, the action against Palestinians. It is being done, that slaughter, with impunity because of the duration of that occupation. And so we must ensure that we end this situation. We can't afford situations where the law only serves to promote the interests of those with power and resources while ensuring that the victims are silenced, the victims who are the very people that all these laws and institutions exist to protect. This state of affairs weakens international law, but also serves to undermine the credibility of those international institutions entrusted with the implementation of these instruments. We must therefore work to end selectivity and double standards and resolutely put an end to the suffering of the Sahrawi for the benefit of all humanity. So in a nutshell, as South Africa, we're saying we need a call to action. Impunity has gone on for too long, and we now need to act, and all people must enjoy the freedoms we love so much. Thank you very much for the opportunity.